Friends, how are you doing? Today, we will do a review on a great comedy family movie 10 Days Without Mom in Courchevel 2023. Friends, the movie is really interesting, so see it through to the end. Come on, let's get started. The movie starts. There is a wedding. Our main characters are present at this wedding. Anthony and Isabel. They are guests. They have 4 children. Isabel's friend is getting married, and it is her wedding. Anthony and Isabel's children are kind of funny. Suddenly, the hosts of the wedding come up to them and give Anthony and Isabel a trip to Courchevel, all booked in advance. These happy. Isabel is a lawyer. Antony is in a temporary apartment, having lost his job. Isabel is on the Eden and sits worried. Her husband comes up to her and asks her what's wrong. Isabel says that our work has not been going well lately. There are no clients. Antony says that everything will be fine, and there's no need to worry. A cake is brought out to the festive table. Everyone is applauding. Suddenly, Antony's youngest son runs straight to the cake. His father follows him and tells him to stop, but he can't make it. This naughty boy knocks the cake over. After a while, Anthony and Isabel go to bed. The next day, they wake up and scream that they overslept. They quickly packed and went to the train. They are going to go to their destination. On the way to, Isabel called an acquaintance and said that there is a job. Isabel immediately informs her husband. She says that she has a job as a lawyer. It is an opportunity to earn a lot of money, and asks him to go on vacation with the children. Later, Isabel says that she will come later. Anthony does not agree with her, saying that he cannot without her. Isabel convinces him again, and finally Anthony agrees and gets on the train with his 4 children and sets off. Anthony goes to his seat on the train, and the children are already there. They start to make noise. The father tells them to calm down and then sits down in another seat. Suddenly, a boy comes to Anthony and says that this is where he belongs. Anthony takes his things. At some point, his kids start making noise. The guy who came in was a bit testy. He jumped up and warned the kids to be quiet. The kids make noise again. Then the guy jumps up and yells at the kids, "You are not alone here. Now whoever makes noise will get it from me." The children immediately become very quiet. Anthony doesn't say anything, just sits silently. After a while, one of the children addresses Anthony with the word "daddy." In response, Anthony pretends not to know his children. Suddenly, the boy sitting next to him says, "Do you think I'm a fool?" He says. The train stops and everyone gets off. This man helps the children and then wanted to leave, but Anthony tells him to go with them for payment. After all, his method of handling the children pleased Anthony. That guy says, "No, I came to visit my sister. I can't go." No matter how much money Anthony offers, that guy refuses. Then the guy looks at the children and tells them to listen to their father and leaves. After that, Anthony and his children get on a bus and go to a rented hotel in a ski resort. On the way, the bus stops. Antony gets sick. When they get to the hotel, they are met by the staff. They are surprised. The tour includes a free taxi directly to the hotel. They say they've sent a special car, and the wedding hosts have already done everything. But Anthony doesn't care. They show them the hotel. The house is something really a fairy tale world. The hotel is wonderful. Anthony and his children love the hotel. The evening came and Anthony went to bed. Then he picks up his phone and sends his wife a text like, "Thank you, my feet didn't rest today." Then he falls asleep. At this time, his wife calls, but he answers. Isabel had an assistant. He was also in love with Isabel. Isabel was very happy to have him come to her house and help. Anthony is getting his kids ready to go skiing. At one point, his little son says he wants to go to the bathroom. Anthony was already dressed. Then Anthony grabs his son and runs to the restroom. When they get to the toilet, the son takes a good shit. Then they all go out and go skiing. They are met by a coach named Eva. She takes her little son Anthony to teach him how to ski. The other children go on their own. Anthony sits down on one of the chairs to rest. But the chair breaks. Everyone laughs. Anthony puts the chair back and finally sits down slowly. Suddenly a female coworker comes in and says, "Do you need something?" Antoni tells her he wants a hot chocolate. When the young girl says the price is 10 euros. Antoni averts his gaze and leaves, saying that someone is calling him. On the way, he bumps into a few people and gets into an awkward situation. At this time his wife calls. Anthony hears a guy's voice next to Isabel's and asks, "Who's in the house?" She pretends the TV is on. Anthony falls down after a while. Someone comes up and asks if he needs help. At which point Anthony asks, "Is that you?" Turns out it's DiCaprio. He was Antoni's boss back in the day. At one time he fired Anthony from his job. That DiCaprio says, "Come on, let's go sit somewhere." Then he miraculously skis down. Anthony sometimes falls and sometimes gets up, and finally reaches the place where DiCaprio is sitting. DiCaprio has prepared all the drinks. Anthony sits there eating and drinking nothing. Then DiCaprio, "It's from the company, don't worry, drink and eat." Then an acquaintance of the employee who brought the chocolates earlier comes over. Anthony tries to hide himself. After a sit-down, suddenly they demand money for the gas. At that moment, DiCaprio says that he left his money in the hotel and asks Anthony to pay. He says that later he will pay for everything. Later Anthony goes to his children and notices the guy who is next to his daughters. At that moment Eva comes along. Next to her is her young son Anthony. Then Eva, softening her words, says your child had a small accident. In response, the father says that also happened to him today. I caused several accidents. Then he goes to the hotel with the children. Anthony and the children are going to have dinner. The little son calls his mother and says that he pooped today, and goes on to say that his father pooped too. Everyone is listening. Suddenly a woman named Laura from next door looks at Anthony. Anthony doesn't understand. A co-worker comes to Isabel and says that work is over. He asks if she needs him. Isabel says it's over and he can go. The second day, Anthony sends his kids skiing again. Then DiCaprio comes up to him and says that skiing is none of his business. Then he says, would he like to rent a motorcycle? Next he leaves with one. Anthony watches. Then Anthony actually rents one when DiCaprio's resting. He rides up to him. The two start competing against each other. Anthony accidentally turns off the road and goes in a different direction. After passing a forbidden sign, he enters the barn of Arnade's house. The chickens lose their feathers. The owner of the barn comes up. Immediately Anthony says that he will fix things here. Then Arnade puts Anthony in his car and takes him to the hotel. Anthony says that we will come and do the repairs in the next few days. Suddenly Anthony walks into the hotel. Looks, the kids are on the first floor. Laura is sitting next to him. She says that the children are alone in the street, and she's brought all the children to the hotel. Antoni walks up to Laura and introduces himself to her. Then Laura says that her son seems to have fallen in love with your daughter. Laura turns out to like Antoni too. Antoni asks if you want something to drink. Laura tells him of course. Anthony immediately brings a drink. They continue their conversation. At some point, Antoni's wife calls him. Antoni picks up the phone and his wife tells him that she still has work to do and that she will be late. Antoni takes his children to bed, and the next day he and his employees go to Arnade's house to get a snowmobile. It turns out that everyone here is afraid of Arnade. Then one of the employees rides off on a motorcycle and says that he has to leave. Another employee does the same. He gets into the car and gets into the car. He gets into the car and says he should stay at the hotel. At this point Arnade says he will drive. Anthony himself hears Anthony at Arnade's house. Arnade brings tea. They have a nice chat. Arnade says that as for me, I won't stay here long. The nature is nice, but my grandchildren are in town. He says he wants to be with them. Later, Anthony returns to the ski center. DiCaprio's here. He's gonna buy property there. Apparently it's an order. so says DiCaprio's boss, and he can't find the right price. After a while, Eva comes up and says she lives in a village on either side of the mountain. Anthony goes back to the hotel, then he looks at Laura. He then approaches Laura and says, "I have a favor to ask of you. Will you look after my children? I have urgent business." She says she will take care of them. Then Anthony finds and informs DiCaprio before they leave. He suggests that he buy a property where the houses behind the mountains that Eva was talking about. He says that you will build a special road leading to the villages from all over the country. Except that the property in their villages is very cheap and you will gain a little. Meanwhile, Anthony says that he wants to go back to work and become the director of the company again. Then DiCaprio says that he doesn't know and the head doesn't agree. After the conversation, Anthony goes to the hotel. Laura is hanging out with some guy. Anthony says, "Where are my kids?" Laura replies, "Don't worry, I sent them to your room." Saying no, Anthony rushes to his room, and the kids noisily take the ashes out of the house. As for his daughter, she and Laura's son went up on the roof. Anthony slipped on the roof and fell down, thinking and worrying about them. After, the daughter apologizes to the father. Then the father says it was nothing and he was just worried. Suddenly the children ask the father, "Why are you cheating on our mother?" The father doesn't understand. Then the children explain that they saw the father looking at Laura. They say that the father shouldn't leave their mother. He hugs his children and says that he has never had another, that he loves only their mother. The next day, Anthony and Laura takes his children, invites them to Arnaud's house. The plan is for everyone to help him. On the one hand, the children are interested. Isabel is in the courtroom. Works as a lawyer and wins the case. The woman who hired Isabel thanks her, and Isabel's colleague suddenly expresses her feelings for Isabel, but Isabel leaves, saying, "No, it's impossible." Anthony, his children, and then Laura order food and sit alone having fun. At that moment, Isabel comes in. She notices Laura sitting next to Anthony and touches him. Without saying a word, Isabel goes into the room. Anthony comes in with his children, and the children hug their mother, but Isabel is angry with Anthony. Then she looks at Anthony and asks about this woman. Anthony says she's just an acquaintance. In other words, his son liked our daughter and we just decided to have dinner together. "I have no one but you," says Anthony. At some point, there was a knock on the door and Laura came in. Anthony opened the door and was shocked, took the bottle in his hand and told his wife that the staff brought it to us. Then there was another knock. The door opens and Laura takes the bottle. Then Anthony tells his wife that the staff will bring the champagne in a tank. The next day, when everyone was going to the ski area, Isabel looked at the staff member and asked, "Why didn't you bring champagne yesterday?" Anthony winks at the employee and he says, "Sorry, we'll bring it today." There was a ski tourney outside. Ski touring. Anthony and Isabel's youngest sons win. After them, Eva comes and congratulates them. Then Eva begins to thank Anthony for his intention to help the village. Eva says thank you for it. Anyway, the village officials will not allow it. They will not do it. That it is bribery everywhere. So to solve the problem, Isabel decides to help. She's a lawyer and a judge. That's why she decides to make a special trip to the village. And Isabel solves everything. DiCaprio, who is watching, is also happy. He thanks Antonia and offers her a job. Says they will make serious plans. But Anthony refuses. Said that it was good that he fired him. Thanks to him, Anthony found a job he loves. Afterwards, all our acquaintances eat at a big table. They tell each other that next year they are here again. Laura winks at Anthony and tells him to tell her so that their children can meet. The next day, Anthony and his family go for a ride. On an inflatable boat, he plays with a sled. That's how the movie ends.